Hi, guys. My name is actually Audra Sisak, but my stage name is Polite Kitty. So if anyone's curious and wants to look me up, that's what it is. This workshop is a storytelling and autism, a practical guide. Last year, we talked about what it meant to have storytelling in an autistic person's life. And we really thought it would be a good idea to have more of a guide at this time to help those who want to be storytellers or want to build on those executive functioning skills, because that is super important. And if Eric can give me, co-host abilities. And I have a whole presentation today, so I have slides that will be available to you guys if you want them. Of course, I'm leaving time at the end to answer any questions that anybody has. And of course, if anybody has questions afterwards, because I know when I'm in the moment, I don't think of anything. And then I go home and I go, okay, I have like 10 questions. You feel free to reach out and contact me. And there we go. I'm going to hopefully be able to share my screen, which is what I am looking for the button. You'll have to excuse me. I have a new program that is new buttons. And I'm looking for that now. And I was pretty sure I knew how to do this before. Eric, do you know how I can share my screen?
On my screen, the option is on the bottom.
Yeah,
in the middle.
Usually mine's there too. And I'm not seeing it now.
Well, is it a PowerPoint or a PDF?
It is. Mm-hmm.
If you want, just email it to me real quick and I'll show it.
Okay.
As an attachment. As an attachment.
Yes.
Email. Yeah.
Yes. Split view. Okay. Can you guys still see me?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So I guess we'll just start off by introducing myself. I, again, Polite Kitty, and you're probably wondering, so why would Eric choose someone like me to run this workshop? It is because I am actually autistic. I'm neurodivergent myself. I have epilepsy. I have like fibromyalgia and depression and PTSD and all kinds of other things. And I'm also a storyteller. Not only am I a storyteller, I am an actor and comedian. And between all of that, I am also a makeup artist and I do therapy. It is a lot. And while I'm emailing this, I never planned for like technical stuff, you know what I mean? And then I get myself into this situation.
That's okay.
It's not letting me do that for some reason. So I have to work off an iPad now.
Well,
because
you don't want to send the file to me?
Oh no, I'm trying and it's not letting me.
Oh, is it on the cloud or something, or what is it?
Yeah, it's a PowerPoint presentation.
Then it should let you if you just attach it to an email.
Yeah, you would think, but it's not. You would think.
Is the file
see if I go onto my.
Is the file too big? Is that the problem, you think?
Maybe.
Because
if I do this and I.
Do you know this program called WeTransfer.com?
Yes.
Have you ever used it? WeTransfer?
Yes.
Well, if it's a big file, you could send it to me.
Oh,
It happens real quick.
yep. Hold on. I think I may be able to. Ah, we have success. You guys just watched real-time action about executive functioning with a neurodivergent.
Well,
Trying to
it
hack one
happens
at
to
once.
all of us. Come on.
So I'm a makeup artist and an actor, and I do therapy. And part of my therapy with children is that we do role play, right? Role play and storytelling. That's exactly what it is. And a lot of people, when they hear storytelling, they think, oh, it's someone standing on a stage with a microphone in their hand doing a very specific order of things. Wow, that's lovely. And I watch those all the time and I go to shows. What's really good is when we have a way that can be different or adapted to those who want to feel included. I know myself as one of them. I do love the stage and I get on stage all the time. But that is a very tedious and routine process for me that I had to really get into, between feeling what a microphone felt like in my hand, knowing how loud I should be talking, how quiet I should be talking, and all of these little details that come up to that. Not only that, but a lot of my clients are non-speaking. And part of what you're going to hear today from me is what we call neuro-affirming language. So you'll hear things like autistic, neurodivergent, non-speaking, just so everyone knows. And when we talk about storytelling in a non-speaking person, what does that look like? What does it look like for a deaf person? Autistic people can be deaf and have many other issues. So we take all of that into consideration, and that's when we get, like, basically just accommodations, and also how to get through that executive functioning process. I think I sent it to you, Eric.
Yes, I have it. I'm just opening it.
Okay. So what is storytelling? Storytelling is any form of entertainment. You guys have all been through like a lot of these sessions already, and it can come from entertainment, it can be fictional, it can be non-fictional, where you are telling personal stories about yourself. I prefer personal stories, but like I said, a lot of my clients prefer those fictionals that role play. And when we can use that storytelling, we can develop relationships, we can develop language. And not just language, like I said, talking from your mouth, but language as in maybe someone can learn how to put it into a device and have a conversation that way. Uh, One of my favorites is that kid. Unfortunately, she's not here, but I believe Banu is the one who has the story about the crow. And I still remember that story from last year when I did this festival, because it was engaging, entertaining, and there was a moral. And because I love animals, and so I remember the story about the crow. And so kids learn that way as well. They're going to learn, oh, that's a crow. So they're going to learn how to label, put colors, and then put consequences, which is not a bad word, just that when one thing happens to a character, this is what can happen next.
Okay, I have it. It's ready.
Okay, no problem. Yes, Eric is getting up the presentation that I have, the slides. There we go. So if you want to go to like slide 2, maybe. Yes. Okay. So slide 2 is, you guys see who I am. Slide 3. Oh, yes. And this is where I also wanted to point out that not only can we learn language and develop um, those relationships. But I have always found it fascinating because I'm a history buff. And so these stories get passed down through generations. It really is not, it's an art form. It definitely is, because again, that whole acting piece. But the importance of storytelling is that we get to tell from our perspective and then pass that down to others who are in our family, in our community, and our society. And that is important, especially for autistic people, because we all experience autism in different ways. It's a spectrum, right? And how cool is it if you could be able to tell your story and your perspective and share it with others who then might think it's relatable, and then they feel good about themselves because they're like, awesome, someone else is sharing the same thing that I am. So next, here's where it becomes a little different. Storytelling is very personal and makes people vulnerable. Whether you're on stage or telling a personal story, or whether it's a fictional story, right? Because let's say you are writing about two dragons and you want to tell a story about two dragons who fall in love with each other. That is still very putting your personal art form out there. And so you have to know, what am I comfortable sharing? How much of it am I comfortable sharing? And what characters do I feel comfortable putting up there? The one thing I always tell people about personal stories is that we have to remember that there's privacy issues. Whatever you tell on stage, whether you think you have a large audience or not, uh, anything gets put on the internet these days. So if you share a story about something that maybe was very traumatic for you, and those people are still here, understand that those people might hear your story. And so it could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. But we just have to respect those who are in those stories. I do know here in Seattle, Washington, the privacy law, there really is none. As long as you feel comfortable sharing it, you are allowed to write. However, I do not know what the international laws would be, maybe in another country like India. Then, of course, there's fictional stories, which I've always put as very important because people like me who are autistic tend to forget. Character development is really important. And interestingly enough, Eric had just shared that you guys had just had a session about character development, because we literally talk about characters in whole workshops just by themselves. Because what we're doing is you are making the audience see that character from, not, it's your perspective, but they're imagining it in their mind. You've got to take them on that journey. And then, of course, if you are wanting to write fictional stories, are there going to be sequels or follow-ups to that? And so that's important to remember as well when you're in the process of putting a story together to tell. Next one. So the process of a story, oh, this is where we dive into it. And this becomes so difficult, I think, for some people, just for anybody, because you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. You're looking at this and it's, wow, there's just, where do I start? Where do I begin? Well, let's break it down so we have exactly what should be in the story and how it kind of flows. And then that way, when you have a flow, then you can start to make it your own story. For an autistic person, we really enjoy when we can watch someone else do it, or we can see exactly how someone else does it, because then we go, okay, so that's the pattern, that's the routine, that's how it's supposed to be done. And then we can add details of our own. So storytelling is just like a play, it's just like a movie. You're going to have usually 3 acts. Act 1 being your introduction, your background, the beginning of a story. Who are we talking about and why are we telling this story on stage or whatever media platform you decide? That first part is just a small introduction. We're just learning about a character. So like if, let's say I use the example from above with the dragons falling in love, in Act 1 you might find out that our dragons names are, you know, Seraphina and Wobble. And so these 2 characters, then in Act 1 you'll build the relationship. You'll go, oh, Seraphina and Wobble live on, you know, Cat Island, and they met during this period of time. And then that's where we start to build that story about where they're from, why are they here. Next. Act 2 is, I think, where at least myself personally, I struggle a lot. This is because this is where we really get into the details of things. Our brain is, you know, again, it becomes very overwhelming. What's the process? And the process of, oh my gosh, how much do I have to do? Because this is where we get to, as my mom calls it, the meat and potatoes of the story. We're very Irish here. You are going to now provide details of the story, the theme, your character development. This is where it's really going to start to flourish, come about. We're going to see not only Seraphina and Wobble from the example used before, but we're going to start to see what the details of their life are like, how they met, you know, and what are the details of their day. A problem or a crisis, usually some sort of, they call it an arc in the story, will happen in Act 2. It doesn't have to be a problem or a crisis, but there's going to be some sort of point or, you know, up, you know, where we reach that arc about why the story is happening. Act 2 is made up of scenes. Think play. There are different scenes that are going to happen. One example that I like to use, we'll get away from the dragons. Let's talk about more of what's my personal stuff, which is I tell a story about how I became a stand-up comedian. So some of those things, some of the scenes in my Act 2 look like bombing, you know, at a open mic, not doing so well, meeting my friends who are also in comedy. And then, you know, maybe an arc for me, instead of being a problem or a crisis, it becomes my first paid gig. And so that's what's going to make up those scenes, that particular act. So you can move on to the next one. And then, of course, this is kind of like my favorite part of storytelling, which is Act 3, because where your crisis or that arc peak, and let's say, again, it's the example with the comedian as a paid gig, that peak is going to hit Act 3, and you're going to see all of either the really cool things or maybe that problem come to a head. There's going to be something that happens, and then you're going to see the resolution and then the end of the story. When I first started storytelling, I had a director one time who told me that you were never to say the moral or the point of the story while you were on stage. but that every story had to have one. And I think this is, while it's good advice, I think that sometimes we need to just tell stories to tell them for the sake of maybe just entertainment purposes or relatability. There's a lot of subjects that are taboo, and I think being disabled is definitely one of them. I run a show here in Seattle called Medical Horrors. It's just a medical show where we talk about all of the things that happen that might happen to us as a disabled person, and how we get to those points and what it's like seeing a doctor all the time. There's usually no moral or real point to the stories that people have come on stage to tell. It has more been about entertainment, making jokes about a situation that could be really hard, and to relate to our audience. I get people who come up to me all the time and tell me, thank you for sharing your story, because it makes me feel good about my everyday. Now, think about an autistic person who is telling a story or sharing a story, and then another autistic person in the audience goes, wow, I do that too. And now there's that connection, and they don't feel so alone. And again, I support mental health therapy, but it's always nice when you see a quote unquote real person have the same either struggle or story as you do. At least, again, that's how I feel.
Audra,
Uh-huh.
can I just add a thought or two about this?
Yeah.
Yes, you've given in great, beautiful detail the elements of Act 1 and 2 and 3, but people should not be intimidated because these things kind of happen automatically.
Yep. They absolutely happen automatically. Um, when you start to write, and we have we have activities today that we're going to do. Don't worry, I'm not going to force anybody to share. It's more just for you to get started. But this is breaking it down, like I said, just point by point. When you start to write, it's going to naturally happen. When you talk about something, I'm going to talk about something very mundane that happened in my life here recently, where where one of my kids, he's a client. I was at his house, and we're working on building language with him, and he can say one word at a time, but what we're trying to do is get him to connect two words at a time, so he can, request things and, just basically share his own thoughts that are happening. And out of the blue, when I was leaving to go home for the day, he waved and he said, "Bye bye, Audra." And I wanted to cry because, wow, all this work that we've done and all that, everything that we've done up to this point, this kid knew my name and I didn't know that. He knew my name, and he appropriately was really excited to say goodbye to me. Now, out of just sharing that small story, there was an act 1, which is the introduction to the characters. There was an act 2, which is the body of what was happening during our session, and an act 3, which is the peak happened of this kid said goodbye to me, and I was really happy about it.
Great. And regarding character development, an idea that I've really been coming across and that I like is that okay, the main character faces challenges or problems, and then in successful cases, she rises to the occasion and overcomes that challenge. So and then and then she has the emotion of I didn't know I had it in me. but
Yes.
I did it, and then she has a sense of confidence that she can face challenges like this. So the falling action, sometimes it's called the falling action after the achievement, is that she's different now. Because she has she has this confidence, and other people treat her differently. So it's a new world for her because she has been able to accomplish something. That's
Yeah, exactly.
mhm.
And while that and I always say, because again, I've had directors in the past who they get really stuck on a pattern and that a story has to be told a certain way. It's not true. I mean, you know, there should be, like, Eric says, maybe she gained confidence and then she's able to move on, or people treat her differently. um what I want to really show you guys is that neurodivergent people, sometimes we miss things because our brains move so fast. And so we don't always say them, and or we get so caught up in our own, like, what's happening, that we forget that, oh, someone else doesn't know that part of the story. And that's okay. The storytelling for a neurodivergent, I believe, is okay in any way, whether it's through a device or written, or, like I said, spoken expression. You can go ahead and hit next.
Should I go next?
Yes. So this is where I want to talk a little bit more about character. It's like I said, it's so interesting that character development was a real theme this year, because it really truly is important. I'm the director of an improv group, and I do improv, and like I said, we spend so much time talking about character development. Um, and again, this isn't going to look the same for everybody. I can only tell you from my own personal and professional experience. Characters help us, again, build those relationships. It helps us to create or show you our personality traits. And that can, for me, when I'm on stage, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I am a very sarcastic, humorous, witty person. And that's the person I'm going to get on, that you're going to get on stage. But maybe somebody else has more of a, what they call a deadpan, or a blunt, monotone voice, and that's okay. But it's showing you your own personality and how that's going to come across. Uh, when we are developing characters, uh, we want to make sure that we include enough details that the audience knows who these characters are for the point of the story. I say that because I myself am guilty of this. I will go on stage and I will give too many details because I want to ensure that you understand what I'm talking about. But then I spend a half an hour talking about character development and talking about my characters only. So an example of this would be, okay, so what do I include in a story? What would be important? Well, definitely the relationships that any characters have. Like I said, their personality. And then, so what about descriptives? Well, my grandma has Alzheimer's, and I do tell a story about her on stage. I do have one for that. When I talk about her, I do not talk about what my grandma looks like. It's not relevant to the story. What's relevant is her personality and how she was before the Alzheimer's versus after the Alzheimer's. However, if I was telling a story about my grandma, maybe when I was growing up, how we used to do Sunday breakfast every day together, I might give a little bit of description of what my grandma looks like. Because in that moment, when I close my eyes and I think about that memory, I'm picturing my grandmother standing in front of a stove making pancakes. And, you know, usually it was like toast and pancakes and fruit. And I like right now, just talking about it, I can smell the pancakes. I can feel the hot stove. I can sense all of that stuff. And that for me would be important in a story. When you're talking about fiction, definitely fiction, you want to put those details in, um, because you want the audience to envision what is happening in the story. So I gave you guys the examples of Seraphina and Wobble as our dragons who are in love. Seraphina to me looks orange and has maybe a little bit of green. I have to give you that detail. Otherwise, somebody else like Eric might think Seraphina is green, and maybe that's important to the story. So you can go ahead and hit next. So this is where we come across our first activity. If you don't want to go do breakout rooms, Eric, that's fine. We can, if you want to do 5 minutes, maybe a couple minutes, whatever we have time for. I wasn't sure about timing with this. You're gonna do one thing. You can write it down, you can put it down, draw it, whatever device you're using. I would love for you guys to pick a point in your life that is a happy memory for you. Just like I could see my grandmother who was making the pancakes and I could smell them. I would love for you to now pick a happy point in your life, and the first one that comes across. Don't think about it too much. Just pick a point, and if you guys want to share, and then we can do that and we can share. And make sure that you remember this and keep it handy, because we are going to use it later for our second activity.
Okay, well, there are 12 of us in the session, and but only four of us have our cameras on. So I suggest let people just write about this, because I
Sure.
don't like I don't like putting people in breakout rooms if they don't have their camera on, because we don't even know if they're there. They might be in the kitchen or something. So
Right.
so is it okay if we just write about this for a few minutes?
Yeah, just take a few minutes, write about it, and then when we get back, we'll share our stuff if you want to. I will apologize. I have 3 dogs and they love to be with me. So if you hear a little bark in the background, I apologize. You think maybe 1 or 2 minutes, Eric?
Sure, whatever you like.
All right, take the last few seconds to get those ideas down. And then we'll move on. I don't want to give you too much time because again, I want it to be those first thoughts, not a whole lot of thinking about it. All right, you can probably start sharing the screen again, Eric.
Okay.
All right, so I did see one that was in the chat. Does anybody want to share about what they came up with? Otherwise, I can share from the chat.
Well, I already mentioned I was so happy yesterday when my teacher, my storytelling teacher, Laura Sims, and literally I started studying with her 50 years ago, 50.
Oh, wow.
But she has always kind of said to me, or it seemed to express that I'm more of a mechanical thinker and not so much of a deep thinker. But yesterday she listened to 45 minutes of the session that I was leading, and she said it was really beautiful. So I
Oh,
felt it was like the first time that I got the message from her that she felt I was more than just a mechanical thinker.
yeah. I was gonna say that's like one of the best compliments you can get. When they come and they validate you, and yeah, it
Hmm.
turns out really nice.
We shouldn't need it, right? We should
We
validate ourselves, but sometimes it's nice. Uh, can I ask a question? Well, you mentioned that you do stand-up comedy, right?
Mhm. Yes.
What came to my mind is um, sometimes in stand-up comedy, the person has a kind of a tagline.
Mhm.
And the one that always stands out in my mind is Rodney Dangerfield, who would always say, "I don't get no respect."
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. And then he would tell stories that illustrate or that were examples of how he didn't get no respect. And then, it
Yeah,
had bad grammar in that statement, and maybe that's one reason he doesn't get the respect. But that tagline is a negative. You asked us to think of a happy memory,
I
but
did.
his whole career, his whole persona was this negative thing of I don't get no respect, and it worked very well for him, right? He's one of the classic. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he's one of the classic comedians. So I think maybe not for storytelling, but if we're doing stand-up comedy, it might be useful to have a tagline that you can go back to again and again and give examples and stories about it, and then that becomes a big part of your identity.
Yes, very much. I actually, I've actually done that with storytelling where I've used my taglines from my jokes and I interweave them into my stories because all of my stand-up material is my stories. It is based on my experiences because I love to make jokes out of everything.
So,
and
so
and
what's your tagline?
Well, sometimes, I mean, it really depends on, I guess it kind of depends on the story and what material I use, because I have a whole book set of, things. But I do get on stage and I tend to say things like, that's not going so well for you. It does have kind of a negative connotation to it, I suppose. Why? Because that's relatable. A lot of people have, you know, like things. Because what's the first thing? That's why I asked you the happy thing. Because the first thing that most people remember is something that's negative or bad that happens to them, a trauma or, that kind of thing. And that's very easy to write about. At least, again, in my personal and professional opinion of what I've seen, when you take a happy memory, that's a little harder to do. You really have to put some effort and thought into it. And I love to see when comedians and storytellers get on stage and it's a more, maybe they have a positive associated with a negative, like you said, and when you gave your example of building confidence. So I do like to see that more.
Okay, I'm sorry for going off on that tangent.
That's okay. No. I saw one person said that they liked to read books to their children, and that was a happy memory. Uh, Definitely for me too. My children are older, so one person shared that they had a train trip to Malaysia as a kid. He had to visit grandparents. See, that's exciting. You can hear the train, you can see the train. There's lots of things inside that. Keeping that in mind, let's move
Excuse me,
on. But like I
Audra,
said,
Rachel has her hand up, and I don't know if she wants
oh,
to say.
I can't. Unfortunately, I can't see. Yeah, so thank you for
Yeah,
letting me know.
sure.
Go ahead,
Right?
Rachel.
Oh, I was going to read what I wrote.
Oh,
If you,
yeah.
okay, this is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. By day, I teach remedial math at the Jewish day school I used to go to. At night, I am in graduate school in public administration, a field new to me. My day job fulfills me emotionally. I know how the Orthodox school works. I wear dresses, not pants. Look the part, play, rather, am the professional teacher. At night, I study new concepts, new language, only to find that the concepts are just like the educational theory I learned, concepts dressed in new clothes. My day job enriches me emotionally. My night classes stretch me intellectually. I can master something new, I realize. I am fulfilled.
Wow. And good for you for going back to graduate school. Uh, there's a lot. So there's a lot there that you can use for like an act two or a where we can start to put scenes together. Because wow, that is a busy, busy schedule.
And I actually was remembering students that I taught, and I was thinking about how I worked with different teachers and I had to gain their trust. So I took the
Mhm.
students out that they needed the help for the most for different reasons. And
Yeah.
um, I had very limited time with each student. So I was actually teaching as I took the kids down the stairs to the library while so a lot was going through my mind. I didn't put any of those specific details, I realized.
Yeah,
But all of that was
hold on to that thought.
okay.
Because that's gonna be, it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just add on? I mean, just to give
Yeah.
I'm the one who wrote about the train trip.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so it was special because my grandparents lived in Malaysia and we were in Singapore, and my father would plan a monthly trip. So one weekend in a month, we would travel by train to visit our grandparents, to visit my grandparents. So that, the travel, the counting down of the station names to see that you're getting closer to your destination. Going to the market, my father, I mean, he did it like a ritual. He goes to the market, he gets a chicken, and then we bring it back to my grandma's house, and the way they welcome us, it's always the same. It's like the same welcome, the same, the chicken curry. So it's like a monthly thing, but I realize, it's very, very happy moments. I really look forward to it. So it's not only about the train and visiting, but everything else that comes along with it. You know, the food,
Yes.
the treatment, the welcome, the love. Yeah, so it's a lot to say actually.
Paula, where
Yeah.
did you travel from?
Sorry?
Where did you travel from? You said
From
to Malaysia,
from from Singapore to
into Malaysia.
Malaysia. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you
I
go to the
think
market to get the chicken those days, they actually go through the whole process of plucking the feathers out and, putting it in
mm,
the hot water and, and then giving it to you. So it was my, no, we don't see that anymore now, but
no.
yeah, but those were the memories.
And see, and that's what I loved about that we've have all these examples, and this is where it's really important to get your perspective, because when I hear train trip, I'm again literal thinker. I'm thinking about the train itself. I want to know what the wheels are. What kind of train did you ride, right? But there's so much more that goes around that happy memory that you can build upon, and that's what we're going to do for our next activity. You guys beat me to it. You were so good. All right, Eric, if anybody else wants to share, please do, but otherwise we can keep going. And that makes me excited for what's going to happen again for activity 2 now. The first part, I think, again, executive functioning wise, picking what is comfortable for you. I've already shared that personal stories are my bread and butter. Personal is all I know. If you were to ask me to create a story about fictional characters, I would not be able to do it, and I would put off and procrastinate and not do my job. I came up with the names of Seraphina and Wobble for the dragons because there is a store here that I go to that has these giant dragons in their store, and they are named Seraphina and Wobble. Those were not something that I created. But I have a best friend who is autistic, and she is very good about creating things from her own mind. So there are some themes that you can go with, romance, mystery, again, comedy being my favorite, family stories, personal, and then I've seen a lot of science storytelling pop up recently, which has also been great to see because it can be very educational. So next. So that body of a story, those 3 acts that I talked about, those are like your scenes from a play. So because it is like a play, again, you are telling that story. You want the audience to see your perspective. So if you are able-bodied, you might give motion when possible, because you're going to bring them into the story. An example of this might be, I recently told a story about visiting an OBGYN at my medical show, and I had props with me for showing what it was like to go through an OBGYN visit. I made the motions, my body, I put my foot up on a chair and was showing how the doctor portrayed how they were trying to help me in that moment. It really gets the audience going, and they love it because, again, they're now in the story with you. Sometimes for your characters, you'll want to have an accent, especially if you're talking about fictional stories or stories that are pretend. Children love it when you bring different voices. So if I'm going to use Banu's story again about the crow, because she created it and she's very good at that. I loved hearing the different accents of the crow versus the other animals in the story. That is how autistic people, while we may have monotone, we might learn how to do those fluctuations with a story. So if you're asking a question, or if someone had a New York accent, that's how we can differentiate between all of them. I'm not going to do my New York accent right now because I have to really work on accents because my voice sounds the same each time. And again, that puts that, but when you are talking about a personal story, nonfiction, you want to just be you. It's your accent, it's your talk. And I want you to be comfortable with who you are on stage or on, like I said, any media platform. Because it's you. If you have really high pitch, or if you're a very bubbly person and you just have that personality, then bring it out on stage. Show people who you are. If you tend to, like I said, be sarcastic like me, then bring it on stage. People will love it. And they will love it because it's your story.
I'm
Yep.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I once heard a storytelling coach say, use your personality.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was so interesting because, I think usually many of us, we think we're just a person, and we don't really have a special personality. We're just a person. But it's an illusion because each one of us has a very specific personality, and it's useful to understand what that personality is. And it's a challenge then to choose stories or shape stories in a way that you'd really use your personality. I think it's a real learning experience to think about this and try to utilize it. You know what I mean? Because I think just many people think, oh, I'm just a regular person. I don't have a particular personality, but then if you ask people, or if you see yourself in video, or then maybe you get a sense of how some of the ways you are unique.
Exactly. And we want to hear that unique personality. We want to see it. Most audience members do, because there's going to be someone who maybe is on the verge or on the fence about telling a story or sharing their experience as well. And maybe you, as a storyteller, help them to gain that confidence and let their personality shine. Because, there's hundreds of thousands of autistic people on this earth. And my story is just one. It's one perspective. I have my own personality, my own core values, but that doesn't mean that somebody else is their story is invalid. I want to hear their story too about, you know, being neurodivergent, because like I said, maybe we share something, maybe we don't. But like you said, everyone's voice is valid.
But of course, the problem is many people are embarrassed or have shame about being neurodivergent.
That is true. It's why I like doing these festivals and talking about it so much, and I'm so open, because again, my hope for my own stories is that somebody will relate to them, because again, I'm going to the relatable comedy theme, right? Because that's mine. That somebody else will be inspired by it, and then they can also use my story to help build, like I said, their own story, you know, with their own personality. That's my hope.
Barry has raised his hand.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very.
I have a question. I'm thinking about this from the viewpoint of telling for neurodiverse audiences. And, you know, in terms of creating new voices for different characters or adding emotion. And of course, neurodivergent audiences are, you know, they're very diverse. And so you never know and you play it. But in general, would you say that, you know, they're different, you know, adaptations that we should make in our storytelling, whether it's being more explicit or setting things out ahead of time or being careful with playing different characters, you know, things like that.
You know, again, that it's a good question, because it's a hard question. Because everybody is so different. And certainly if you are a neurodiverse person going to a storytelling event, my hope is that you are going to have your own accommodations put in place if you need something specific. Now, if you're talking about like on stage, certainly, and I do this actually in the next slide, I love to have interpreters at my show. I will usually have somebody like who's here in America. Well, you're in Atlanta, you're here in the US. I love to do American Sign Language interpreters, and I love to do so like a screen, I guess, at my shows that actually have the subtitles, or somebody who maybe needs headphones. Maybe there's somebody, you know, who can be there to tell them, you know, what is being said if I can't have the screen with the subtitles. Because and that's why I like to record a lot of my stuff as well. Because there are going to be people who need accommodations. There's going to be people who need to stand up, maybe move their bodies around while you're storytelling. And I think as a storyteller, we just have to be aware of that. And I practice that by doing comedy at open mics. Because if you go to a bar at an open mic, you're going to have different variables of people. You're going to have different sounds, different environments. And that helps me literally plan for noise, plan for movement, and plan for an audience that may or may not understand what I'm talking about. Then I take that material and then bring it to a stage where I have a full audience with low lighting.
I think about in theater how I've been in plays where one performance has been a sensory, you know, kind of sensitive performance, you know, where we've taken down the loud noises and so on. And I just wonder, is there a correlative in terms of storytelling? Or there kind of, you know, if I'm going to be with an audience like at a school that serves a neurodiverse population, are there kind of do's, but especially don'ts about what I would want to do? And maybe we don't have an answer now, but you know, it's just something I'm thinking about.
I don't think we have a set answer of do's and don'ts, because one person may really enjoy maybe the loud voice or a back and forth between two characters, right? With two different accents, where you have another person who may not enjoy that at all. So that, again, that's a hard one. Maybe the answer might be getting and then in theater this would be really hard, but maybe seeing who's there when the audience members are being put into their seats, getting a read on the room, walking around, seeing what's happening, just observing from afar, and then you can adjust your own performance to the stage.
Audra, I have a question too.
Sure.
You mentioned planning for the audience, like you plan how you want to. I mean, they can be walking in the room, or they can be noisy. They can just have triggers, at
Yep.
any point of your performance. So you said you plan ahead. So I would just like to know, I'm interested to know, I mean, sometimes you just can't plan for everything, right?
Right.
Yeah. So how do you plan ahead? What are the things that is it something like, okay, if I'm going to do this, if this doesn't work, is plan B? Or how does it how would you do it?
Yeah, again, it's a difficult question, because you have to plan for the unplanned, and that's tough.
Yeah.
It's the same with the audience, like Barry's question. My ritual is, I come to a theater. I need to walk up and down the theater seats. I need to feel the theater seats. I need to feel the stage. I need to feel the microphone. And I have to stand in the theater as audiences are being sat, because the gradual sound of the audience getting louder and louder makes it easier for me than if I just walk on stage and there's already chaos going on. So this comes back to why I do improv. Improv almost sets me up for the unexpected. It helps. It's a muscle. I've had comedy coaches who tell me this all the time. It's a muscle, just like storytelling is a muscle that you have to use over and over again. Planning for the unplanned is a muscle you have to use over and over again. And that comes with experience and being able to adjust to yourself on stage. So if you notice that, let's say there is a loud part in your story and you see that all of a sudden someone is triggered, oh, well, I have to plan that maybe I can be a little quieter now. And again, that's part of improv.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Those are just really hard questions. And it comes with knowing yourself. Like I said, that's why I said choose a theme that you're comfortable with and being comfortable on stage. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Audra.
Okay. So the other problem that I've always ran into is saving your work, or where do I put my work at? Like, where do I put my storytelling and my writings? A lot of kids I work with have devices, and those devices, you can actually save responses in them. And so you can, that way, if someone is non-speaking, they can just hit a button. Same with audience members. If you have a non-speaking audience member and they want to ask a question, I think just being patient, while they type in a question, or, making sure that their device is there so someone else can, their aide or their parent or whoever can help them in their own situation. So dictation or oral is something that I encourage so many people to do. You don't know when inspiration is going to strike any moment. And sometimes writing it down is so difficult. And putting it into just a recording device gets those thoughts out. You can always edit later. Edit at any other time, but just to get it out of your brain and out of your head and put it somewhere. My favorite was my acting coach. He always told me, he still does, write on journals or in paper. The feeling of a pen, writing will help. It's actually been proven it will help your memory more. Because when you are storytelling, the idea or the main thing is that, we want to have them memorized. So when you're on stage, you can just tell your story and not have the paper in front of you. However, I do know that some people need that accommodation. I don't want to say that it's bad. It's not. It's just that the preferred method is memorizing, because it's your story, right? You wrote it, you know it. The words just need to come out. I like Google Docs. The reason I like Google Docs is because it auto saves. I cannot tell you how many times I have done something and accidentally did not save it, and now it's gone forever. And to get me to start over in a process is very difficult. Once I've started the process, I cannot just do part of it on written and then part of it on Word. Start to finish, I have to do the same thing. It's a routine. So it could cause a meltdown for me if I didn't save something. And it has in the past, definitely. I've been there. I have used Microsoft Word. Again, just make sure you're saving all the time. Because some kids are really, I noticed with the newer generation, they are very good with typing and, devices and all that. So Google Docs and Microsoft Word tend to be their favorite. And again, inspiration can happen at any time. I encourage everyone to carry their recorders, their device, and their notebooks with them at all times. You could be in the moment and go, wow, this was something I need to tell or I need to talk about. And it could just be 2 or 3 words, but having that notebook at that time to write it down is crucial, because I guarantee for someone like me, I'm going to have that experience and go home and completely forget what I was doing or forget to write it down. And the moment is lost. So it's always
Audra,
interesting. Yeah.
I was going to say, you say device there, and I think these days most of us have phones, and most of our phones have some kind of a voice memo. So it's not even carrying a device; it's just using the phone that you probably have on you at all times anyway. I mean, mine is glued to my hip.
Right. I mean, you're right. I forgot. I always forget. And see, that's the one I always forget about. Most phones have the voice memos now, and you could always record into that. I say recorder because a little piece, another tidbit of me that I don't tell everybody is that I'm a paranormal investigator, and so I'm always carrying like a little device recorder with me. And so I use that as well for not only paranormal investigating, but for, inspiration when it happens. I also say device because some of my non-speaking adults who are autistic, they use a device to communicate. And this is how so there's actually a little space on their device where they can just put in their ideas and they save it for later.
I think it's good to keep it general because everybody has their own favorite method.
Yeah.
I don't use a voice recorder on my phone. I don't even know how to use it, and I don't want to. I really enjoy typing. Because I love the ability to move things around afterwards, to cut and paste. So
Yep.
so my chosen method of journaling is typing into a computer. But as you say, there are positive aspects of writing it by hand, and I'm sure there are positive aspects of talking it into a phone. But everybody, needs to do what they're most comfortable with.
Right. Yep, exactly. That goes back to the what am I comfortable with, my vulnerability level. Well, some people it could be typing like Microsoft Word, or just using any kind of notepad in your computer, or someone like me who's going to carry around a notebook and a pen all the time.
Okay, now
Definitely.
there's 13 minutes left. Did you say there's another activity for us?
One more activity. Yes, we're getting right towards the end here.
Should I go to the next page?
Yep, you can go to the next page. Getting started, I'll just go over this real quickly. Motivation about why you are telling a story. Schedule time for writing and rehearsing. Routines help so much. Again, make that routine. And most autistic people, if you set a routine, will follow it. We like routine. An environment that's comfortable for you. People always tell me that, oh, you should do writing when you're at home in a chair by yourself when it's quiet. Well, no, some people really function with music going in the background, and that's how I function. So finding what works for you, and it's going to be trial and error. And forgetting the norms about your own, what you have learned maybe, and then finding your own path. And again, that could be, like I said, writing, speaking, and sometimes even interpretive dance. And then you can, yep. Oh, so I used this already where I talked about my own personal experience about getting started as a comedian. My topic and theme, personal and comedy. I did a podcast. I forgot about that. I was in a music video. I bombed at several open mics, and then again, my peak, maybe possible scene where I got my first paid gig. And then you can, yep. So activity 2, this brings us full circle to our first activity. What I want you to do is I want you to think about that happy memory. I want you to pick 3 possible scenes from that. We got the train story where she described about her chicken, and getting the meal for that day. That could be a possible scene. Their thoughts, events, ideas that happen around that memory. And so I would like you to take a few minutes to just write down 3 of them, get them together, and then we'll share, and then we'll wrap this up. probably take just another minute. I want to make sure that I leave a few minutes for everyone if they want to ask questions or, you know, just in general ask me things since I'm here. All right, Eric, if you could hit next on my thing here. I think we should be pretty close. Yep, that should be the last of it. All right, so while you guys are finishing up writing down your scenes, and we'll share them in a second, I would just want to congratulate everybody because everyone in this room has now started their journey to being a storyteller. You have picked a topic, you picked a memory, and you have created 3 scenes for your story already. So really, that's half the battle, is just starting the process right here. The next step is how do you finish the story? Where are you going with it? Well, choosing a medium like a stage. I love stage. Maybe some others don't. Sometimes we tell stories just for ourselves. And of course, the biggest one, social media. YouTube is a wonderful outlet for recording your stories. And that way you so that way you can see what you're, you can record, see what you're like, and then you can put your story out there without having to be on a stage. YouTube is also great because it gives you subtitles. If you are fancy like me, you can have a screen at one of your shows and that will put the subtitles up for you. And then interpreters. I love having interpreters there. I don't know if India or other countries have different like sign language and different languages. So I really try to accommodate for that as well. So if I have someone who only speaks Spanish, maybe I'll have a Spanish interpreter there. And then practicing in the same environment to ensure readiness. That is, again, crucial for that routine. So that way you know exactly what to expect when you're telling your story. So that is my presentation. I would love to have any questions, or if you guys want to share what you wrote for your scenes for the last few minutes.
Hi, it's me
Yeah,
again. No, I mean, just
yeah,
continuing the chicken story. So,
yeah,
so
yeah.
after
Actually, what year is?
after we get the chicken right, so my grandmother prepares lunch. So, and they use the firewood brick stove.
Mhm.
So I'm the one who's blowing into a pipe, trying to get the flames up, and then giving up halfway because you tear and you cough, uh, and I run away and just wait for her to get the food ready.
Yep.
So while waiting, I'm bored. So they're like in little villages. So there are chickens roaming around. So I chase chickens. I take the time to wash up the patio, because the chickens would just walk and poop. So I just, pour water. So these are little activities that goes on in that one day, like
Right.
taking,
And look how much detail and more you can build on a story of the theme. The topic was I took a train ride to go see my grandparents, and look how much more we are on, so
right,
that's how you start that building process.
right, yeah. And then I think in between, you just go on adding details or, like what you mentioned, um, changing your voice,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, one example was again this story I just had a show last week with my medical show and talking about the OBGYN, and there was one I'm not going to go into detail, but there was one part like where it like really hurt and there was something going on, and I had my foot on the chair and my voice went really deep because I got into it, and I'm like, get it out of there, so it brings the audience into that moment. So maybe the chickens, when they're running around, you're making the little noises as you're, running around with them. Well, if that's it, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you.
Okay, it's been a wonderful session. Thank you so much. And I'm putting your contact information into the chat section.
Yes, please do.
And carry on. And thank you
All
very
right.
much. We'll
Thank you guys.
great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Audra.
You're welcome. Oh, Joyce, no, now my dog's in there.